What's going on, everyone? It's Bales, and welcome back to another episode of AFL Fantasy Head-to-Head, where we put two players up against one another and see who comes out on top. This is episode 15 of the series. If you haven't checked out the other 14 episodes, make sure you go and do that. Some great guests. Another special guest as well is another member of the PODPOD, the third member we've had already on the series. Multiple top 10 finisher. It is Harmey, mate. How you doing?
I'm going well, Bales. Yeah, no, sort of getting my head around the upcoming season and all the stuff that's come out to date. So, looking forward to some footy starting, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, obviously it's very pre-recorded, but next week we get sort of match simulation and stuff going on. So it's really starting to ramp up, which is always good. And this is the best time of the preseason. We get to actually watch some action. But we are talking about two forwards that are a little bit cheaper, and obviously the forward line being such a barren position this year with hardly any preems that we're really confident in. These two guys could be very, very important selections in your side. So we're talking about Taylor Adams and Zack Fisher. So Harmey will be taking Taylor Adams first, being the more expensive player. I'll be taking Zack Fisher next, and we'll see who comes out on top on the head-to-head. So, Harmey, mate, why should people be selecting Taylor Adams in their starting side for 2024?
Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because they're not exactly two like-for-like players. I mean, there's a bit of age between them, and there's a bit of role difference from what we've seen in the past. But look, being a bit of a fossil myself, Taylor Adams, 30 years old, he's been there and done it. And, that is actually something that attracts me to a player when I'm picking my starting side. Who's been there and done it before? So when I look at Taylor Adams, he's had a bit of a low year last year. He's coming in price at 77. So he's going to cost you 691,000 as a forward. But I had a look back through his scoring history, and there's only one other year when he has scored in the 70s, and that was his rookie year. Would you believe that? His second year, he's hit 100. So, I mean, you've only got to look back the last few years. 2022, averaged 82. 2021, 101. 2020, 112. COVID affected. 2019, 95. 95, 115. He just gets it done if he's got the role. And that was the problem last year. He was sort of told by the Pies that he was going to be playing forward. So there's only 5 games in last year where he had 50% CBAs or more. So he was really out of that key centre bounce rotation, and that's really where he has a high scoring pedigree, because he's not the fastest. He's not too bad, but he really needs to be around the ball to pick up those possessions. So I'd say there's a fair few reasons why we should be looking at him, mate. What do you reckon?
Yeah, he's been in my side pretty much from almost the get-go. He's in my first starting side. He's still there. I think that we've seen pictures of Mills actually like almost getting in sort of towards full training. So whether he actually plays round one, I can't see it. But I've seen sort of weirder things happen. But with the anticipation is he's not going to start, and Sydney have had a few players in there that like your row bottom has just sort of been sort of tracking along, not doing a heap. You've had other like Papley and Heaney going through there. They really shouldn't be playing as midfielders. They're more forwards. We tried Heaney for years as a midfield. That's never going to happen. So just stick him in the forward, stick Papley forward. Adams is that guy that comes in, can be that in and out sort of ball. It can allow Parker to sort of rotate a little bit more between forward and midfield. I think he's still going to be majority more midfield, but he can go forward because we've seen he can be quite dangerous up there. So I just can't see a world where Adams isn't playing midfield for them. Like, they recruited him for a reason. For me, the only real sort of thing that makes me a bit worried about Adams is just that opening round bye. But because he's got the round 5 bye, you've got that sort of month to look at him. Obviously, he's got that good price rise in round 1. So if he's not a good pick, you can offload him in round 5. But if he's a good pick, you can actually hold him through. So does that buy come into your thinking with Adams, or is it just he's just value, like, and he's not like a premium value over 850k? It's like you're talking about a guy that's priced under 700 and you just pick him sort of if he looks good in the preseason, he's got that role.
Yeah, look, I'll come back to that midfield mix in a sec, but it's not the round 2 or 3 buy, which I would be more concerned about. Like, you're going to get a few price rises and you're going to get a few decent scores out of him. I think that for people that are priced 900,000 and above, it really does play in my mind, and I'm quite concerned about starting them. But him priced at 691 with the lack of forwards that we have available, I'm sort of less concerned about Taylor Adams. And by the time round 5 comes around, we may have even flipped a couple of players, or we might be starting to see sort of some other movements transpiring. So yeah, I'm a little bit off the GWS and not Collingwood, Gold Coast, because that early buy. But look, I'll throw one thing to you. Do you reckon Taylor Adams would have gone there if they said, "Hey Taylor, got a spot for you. It's in the forward pocket or on the forward flank. What do you reckon about going for a run?" I don't think he would have been interested. I think he has seen this as his opportunity to show the Pies that they have made a bit of a bad call about throwing him out of that centre rotation, and he's come out. He's putting in a decent pre-season as a mid with a point to prove. I think that he's going to have a good season, and I'm quite sort of keen. And I can't really see him kicking around in the forward line, sitting deep, and he's not a marking target, and he's probably not as quick as like Florent Haywood. Even Heaney sort of type that's going to burst away from the defenders and get on a lead. So I think that it's an inside mid role, and with the SCG being a bit of a smaller ground, it's probably going to suit him as well. Plus, we didn't even talk about reuniting with Grundy. Hey, that old Collingwood connection where potentially, arguably they were both in their prime. So, I'm sure he's got a good relationship with him, or it was probably another piece of the puzzle to get him up to Sydney.
Yeah, and I agree as well. They for one, as you said, they wouldn't have recruited him if they weren't going to play midfield. But as you said, Adams wouldn't have gone to Sydney if they just said, "Oh, you're going to be playing forward," because he's just like, "Well, I'm already at Collingwood. I'm already playing in their team. We just won a premiership. We're going to try and go back to back, so I want to stay here." So you'd imagine that he's going to be having a better role. And you sort of mentioned the midfield mix there. How do you see that playing out? Because I sort of look at it and I go, Warner's going to be in there. He wasn't in there much at the back end of last year, which I'm not exactly sure what the reasoning for that was. I think Parker will be the sort of another main guy in there, but I think Adams is that third guy in there. I think the other guys can play in other spots on the ground, and Parker can also wrestle. And then when Mills comes back in, then that will be another dynamic we talk about then. But how do you see that midfield mix playing out?
I mean, look, I don't know, but I really think that Mills is going back. Just the way the injury happened, and he sort of wasn't as effective in that role last year anyway. So I just feel as though that's going to happen whenever he returns, but I'm not sure. Goulden will go through there a little bit in patches, but I think you had it pretty well. Rowbottom and Warner and Parker and Adams. I think that's going to be a key force. So I think he's going to be in there a large proportion of the time.
Yeah, and I'd like to see Gordon in there a lot more as well, but he's just I think he's just so effective on that wing, just with his gut running and everything. I just think that he's just very valuable on a wing, and he'll pinch hit in the midfield, but I think Adams will be that guy that's in there for a lot more as well. So very big preseason watch. And the good thing about Adams is we do get to see him in that opening round. So even though he does have that early bye, we actually get to see him puts up a good score. I dare say he's going to be owned by a lot more, because his current ownership at time of recording as well is 26.54%. So he's in a fair few teams at this early stage, and could be a lot more depending on the opening round score. But we're going to move to the other player in this head-to-head battle, so Zack Fisher. So while I'm speaking about ownerships, he's at 11.4%, so a little bit more unique there, but still in a few sides. The big thing here is it's not really much use looking at what he scored at Carlton and everything like that. It's probably more of what he scored last year in the VFL, and then when he came into Carlton's side, what he actually scored when he was playing that role. So in the VFL last year, so he played 6 games in that role with scores of 101, 65, 150 right there as well. 95, 87, and 93. So very, very good numbers there as well. That probably equates to a pretty high 90s average there with just the one poor score. And then in the back 4 games of the Carlton's year, he came in, scored a 108, 63, 103, and a 70. So again, good numbers there. All those games were above 77% game time as well. So no sort of any sub-affected games there. It's clearly shown that in limited sample last year when playing in this half-back role that he can score well. And obviously, we speak about that. He's gone North Melbourne and he's been training as a half-back flanker. Obviously, you had Sheasel back there last year going really well. He's been sort of talked about potentially moving further up the ground into maybe a mid-forward role. Obviously, it'd be interesting to see how that goes. Colin McKerch is another name that's been playing off half-back press and looked pretty good by all reports. But Fisher's that guy that we're hoping takes that Zeeble, Aaron Hall role and can take those kick-ins and just sort of rack up those +6s there. And we mentioned with Adams in a forward line that there's not a lot of options at all. Pretty much, me and DC, while the episode talking about McRae and Flanders, they're pretty much the main two premiums, and then the rest of them are sort of very iffy. So this forward line is very tricky to figure out, Harmey. So with Fisher, is he a guy that you're looking at, priced just over 600K and a guy that could potentially be, if everything goes well, it could be a top 6 forward based on the ones we've got there at the moment. So what are your thoughts with Fisher?
Yeah, well, I guess the more that North have been talking him up in that role, the more interested I sort of became. So I sort of noticed that 6 games in the VFL, averaging 99. So in the role that we are talking about, he scored pretty well. And then came back to the Blues senior team, and the 108, 63, 103, 70. But the issue was he got dropped again. So he wasn't really going to get much of a run, I don't think, with the Blues, the way that things were panning out. But he got targeted by North, didn't he? So they have identified him doing that. They liked what they saw. They went after him. So I guess all things pointing towards him getting that role in defence, and at North Melbourne, that being a pretty fruitful one, hey, based on the history. So, yeah, have been interested. But as opposed to Adams, doesn't really have the history there. We're sort of having a bit of a stab, aren't we, if we go for him. But you're right. If everything fell his way, he could be a top 6 forward.
Yeah, and we, as you mentioned, so that stab in the dark in a way, there's a lot of coaches are probably looking to do that in the forward lines. You maybe getting a couple of guys like that. So I think Adams isn't really a stab in the dark. I think, as you said, proven scorer. We expect that role to sort of eventuate there. But when you look at guys that a few people talked about, like your Conor McDonald, your Josh Rochelle's, even like a Jack Billings to an extent, because he's a different team. He's we don't know what role he's going to be in. James Jordan, another obviously member of Sydney as well. Cam McKenzie, another one. So there's a lot of these forward options that people are considering that we don't. That almost you're just hoping they can go that 85, 90 and just sort of be that guy that could be around the top 10 forwards. And maybe when we get some DPPs, hopefully in round 7 and later in the year, then maybe we can trade them to other guys. But where do you see Fisher's, if you were to project an average for him playing in this role? Obviously, we haven't seen him in this role for a sustained period. Where would you put him at? Would you put him at 85, 90? Do you have him maybe a bit more, a bit less? Where do you have him?
Yeah, I reckon that mid-80s is a fair stab. It's a fair sort of guess. Well, I don't think he's going to be 99, is he? But I think that, he could definitely well be over 80. So there's some upside there. Priced at 69. But the other thing is, see, with Fisher, you mentioned a few other options there in the forward line. And if Fisher is priced at 623,000, let's say he didn't pan out, like he wasn't doing what you wanted him to do, there's those guys in that price bracket below that you could drop down to very easily as a sort of a safety net.
Yeah, exactly right. And because the forward line, there's not probably going to be many picks that can, well, they're not going to get away from you if you sort of watch a week or two and you see good scores. So if as you say, Fisher's not panning out, and let's say a Conor McDonald with Will Day missing the first month, maybe he's played midfield and you don't start with him, you can jump on him. It's not going to cost you any more than probably 60, 70K at the most, depending on price drivers. But there is that sort of safety net. It's a bit different when instead of if you go for a midfielder like I don't know, sorry, Dossie, but like a Paddy Dow or George Ward or someone like that doesn't pan out, you've actually got to find a fair bit of money to try and get up to, even if it is just a Matt Crouch or a Cam Guthrie. Obviously, we spoke about on the previous episode. If you're trying to get up to them, it's going to cost you maybe a couple $100K. So, whereas the forward line's not going to cost you too much, which is interesting. And with the lack of forwards, that is something to consider. But Tom's come to sort of pick between the two players. So, Harmey, mate, who would you be picking out of Taylor Adams and Zack Fisher for 2024?
He's one of the first picked in my starting lineup at the moment. He's still sitting there, and that's Taylor Adams. I really enjoyed what he's done in the past, and I reckon he can get back to his best just about this year. I know he's 30 years old, but I just really think he's having a solid preseason, and there's no real reason at this point in time why I wouldn't pick him in my forward line.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm agreeing. And funny enough, we haven't had too many disagreements with any of the head-to-head battles. So I'm waiting for that episode where I sort of disagree with the guest. But no, we're all on the same track. I go Adams as well. And I think that the flag that we will sort of raise now, I thought it'd be good to get the information for Fisher out there first, because if this isn't relevant in a few weeks, then that's fine. But at the time of recording, we have seen Fisher sort of go down with a couple of hamstring niggles. So that's just something to consider there. Maybe it sways you away from starting him in your side, and who knows, maybe by the time the video is released, maybe he's out for a certain period. We just don't know. So will be something to look at. But yeah, I think Adams, proven scorer, proven history. He's gone to Sydney. He's going to be getting a midfield role, and yeah, I see him returning back to that 90 plus, and he's going to be amongst the top scoring forwards that we do have available. So, would you just sort of the last discussion, Harmey? Would you have any other guys priced around these two? Would you maybe rate them higher? So obviously, I haven't talked about a couple of them yet, but like your Con McDonald, your Josh Rochelle's. Would you have any of these guys ahead of maybe both or either or? Like, where do you see these sort of two in terms of all those underpriced forwards?
I just had one thought when you were talking through the injury history there. I hope you haven't jinxed Taylor Adams and tomorrow he goes down with some sort of injury bails. But look, yeah, I've thought about Rochelle. I've thought about Connor McDonald. At the moment, I don't have them in my team, and I'm sort of electing to go a bit cheaper and spend up the money in my midfield. But look, there's still a little bit of time, hey, until the start of the season. So, yeah, look, I have been thinking and looking at options around that slightly cheaper price, but I've been trying to go down under 500,000 at this point in time with my forwards. So that's where most of mine lie. But yeah, look, I tell you what, if the Crows came out and said Rochelle's our man in the midfield and we're investing in him, I would certainly be more interested.
Yeah, exactly. And I would be as well. And I was chatting to started with this with Crouch. I just think that Crouch is going to be those three mids to start the year for the Crows. But whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. As long as the Crows win, that's all I care about. But if Rochelle's in the midfield and the Crows win, then great, and I'll be happy to sort of start him or pick him up, and will be an interesting watch. But sort of as you mentioned with Adams and Fisher, have you got both of these guys in your side at the moment? Have you got? Are you missing one? Where are these guys sitting in your side at the moment?
In the forward line, I think I got McRae and then Adams, and then I drop right down. So that's where I sit at the moment. I have sort of looked at Fisher at times as well, though. So I guess I'm interested. Hey, but just on that Rochelle thing, you're a Crows man. So who have you got in the starting midfield? Round one, first bounce, who's standing there?
Laird, Dawson, and Crouch for me. I think that's the and I do think obviously I'll chat in this in a lot more depth as well when we do. Well, Rochelle will be on a future episode, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But just even Pedler was in there more than him last year, so I don't quite know where he has that path to the CBAs. I guess we want for him to have that scoring bump. So it's going to be an interesting preseason watch. Maybe he's having a preseason in the midfield. I'm not sure yet. I haven't been down a Crows session yet to really scope out if he's training midfield. I haven't seen any reports yet. But if he starts training midfield this preseason, then maybe they're gearing him up to play that more mid-forward role. But it will be interesting. If he, as you say, if he's a mid, I think that it's going to be hard-pressed not to pick him, because he showed last year he can go around that 90 average for a few games. And a guy priced cheaply like this could be good avenue to start with. So will be very, very interesting. But yeah, I currently have Adams and Fisher in my side, but the Fisher news is sort of maybe a little bit hesitant, and he could go out, and then there's a few options there like Rochelle could replace him. So we'll have to see. But that'll conclude another head-to-head battle. Let us know in the comments below your thoughts on Taylor Adams and Zack Fisher heading into 2024 if you're starting either of them, or if you've got any other general questions, put them in the comments below. It'd be very much appreciated. Make sure you do leave a like on the video as well. So people watching now, 2 seconds, just takes 2 seconds. Just click the like. It does help out the channel as well, and also subscribe as we're on our road to 2,000 subscribers. But Harmey, mate, thank you very much for jumping on. Where can the people find you across the socials and also on the PODPOD?
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for the chat, Bales. You can find me on X, john.harmey. And yeah, on the PodPod most weeks. With Dawson, Holmesy, and Louis, and Stato. So yeah, it's been a bit of fun this year. We've got a few things still coming up towards the start of the season.
Yeah, no, looking forward to it, mate. And yeah, the preseason is well into gear now, so got to get our team sorted before the next few weeks because season's just around the corner. So you can find me as well at BalesDT on Twitter or X and Instagram as well. And also, if you're listening to the podcast version of it, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. That'd be very much appreciated. It does help out the AFL Fantasy Fanatics as well. Make sure you go and follow AFL Fantasy Fanatics on X as well at AFL Fantasy Fans. And yeah, we've got plenty of content coming out this year, and then should be another good year. So next episode, we have another special guest jumping on. He's been on a few pods already this pre-season. We're going to be talking about 2 of the premium rucks in the competition as well. And we're also probably going to touch on as well sort of a few of those value plays and whether we should be starting the value ones or going and paying up. So we're very, very good episode there. So thanks again, Harmey, for jumping on, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. So we're out. Cheers.